All right, it looks like we have people starting to file in here, so I'm gonna go ahead and get started with our session since we're already a little bit behind schedule and everything. There's a lot of information to take in here, but happy Saturday to everyone. My name is Andre Sam, and I am a disability and special needs planner with the Disability and Special Needs Project. I work with organizations around the country and families around the country who happen to have a loved one with some sort of either physical disability or cognitive disability. Uh, I work with about 60 different disabilities, diseases, and disorders. So anything from muscular dystrophy to spina bifida to autism, Down syndrome, ALS, Huntington's disease, you name it. So if you work with anyone who may not have spina bifida but has some other physical or cognitive delay, this session is going to be just as informative for you to being able to relay that information to them as well. So this is Disability and Special Needs Planning Made Easy. And this is my contact information. It will show up at the end of the slides as well, because this is a lot of information to take in, and you're definitely going to feel like you're drinking from a fire hose here. And I would strongly recommend that you take personal notes because majority of the session is going to be verbal, and the slides are more just as a guide to continue the conversation and everything. But I am more than happy to schedule a private complimentary meeting with you if that's of interest to you. And I'd be happy to go over everything we discussed today, but more so how it pertains to either your circumstances or maybe the families you serve or an individual family you serve, whoever it may be. And I'm happy to do that either in person or over the phone or through Zoom, whatever is going to work best. And at this point, I've worked with just about every state in the union. Only a couple of states there that I still haven't. Just because I haven't doesn't mean that I don't. I just simply haven't at this point. So if you do have a family in one of these states that's of interest, by all means, I'm more than happy to have a further conversation. So when it comes to disability and special needs planning, oftentimes I hear people say, well, what exactly is it? Because it is kind of a broad topic. And so what exactly is involved in it? Well, disability and special needs planning, I break it down into 4 key aspects. There is the legal planning, there is the government benefit coordination, there is the budget and financial planning, and then there is the lifestyle and transition planning. And we will go over each and every one of those today. And oftentimes with planning, it's something that people don't quite understand the need or the importance of. And it kind of gets put on the back burner because, well, everyday life gets in the way. And you don't necessarily see the immediate fruits of your labor from doing this type of planning. But this type of planning is going to help open up as many possible opportunities for your loved one or for the individual with the disability or special need, as many as possible. Because if you don't plan ahead right now, well, then some of those doors can shut on opportunities that could be available in the future to continue that person's growth and development. And when I say those things, oftentimes people say, well, yeah, that makes sense. And yes, that is definitely important. And I'd probably say 99% of people say it's important. And yet I'd probably say only about 5 to 10% of people actually go through planning. And with such a big gap there, why is it that so many families fail to plan for their loved one? Well, I just mentioned a second ago, daily life. There are things that are more immediate that come up, and oftentimes families are just trying to get through the day. Okay. And it can be an emotionally uncomfortable topic to discuss. Maybe there are some financial issues involved. And oftentimes people don't know who to turn to or where to turn to find resources. And as I mentioned as well, there is a lack of patience that we as human beings simply have. We want immediate results. Yeah, if a parent is taking their child to the doctor or to the therapist and they come out from that appointment, they look at their child and they hug them and embrace them, but then the parent's eyes go to the doctor, the therapist, and they want to hear something that is growth or development. They want to know that what they just did is worth it. And oftentimes with planning, you're not going to see that immediately. These are going to be things that are going to impact them in the big picture for the long term, though. So some things to consider when doing proper disability and special needs planning are, what are your expectations for your loved one? And do you envision educational goals down the road? Do you envision employment, self-sufficiency? How do you envision them living their everyday life? What types of activities? What types of living situations are involved? Are you envisioning them living with a family member or on their own in their own apartment or their own house or in a group home? And oftentimes, Medicaid and SSI is involved. And will those things provide for everything? And if so, how much? And keep in mind, if you do rely solely on government benefits, are you aware of the quantity and the quality of the care that you'll receive or the wait lists that are involved in Medicaid-funded group homes, or just simply the waiver program as a whole? I mean, you do kind of get what you pay for, and if you're not really paying much, well, are you really going to get much? So that's something to consider. What does life look like for your loved one tomorrow? So if something happened to you, what's going to happen? Who's going to take care of them? Is guardianship needed in the future? And what exactly is it? Will whoever you want to be in charge know what to do and how? And how are you going to set aside funds specifically for your loved one to live the life you want for them when Medicaid and SSI places a $2,000 limit on the amount of assets that can be in that person's name? So before we start diving in, just full disclosure, this content is for informational purposes only and is not to be construed as financial and or legal advice. As I mentioned at the beginning, taking personal notes is recommended. This part, I use these slides for many conference presentations, so this part isn't as applicable since this session is being recorded, but majority of what I'm going to be discussing is going to be verbal. It's not going to be actually on the slide, so it's something worth taking your own personal notes on. So as I mentioned a minute ago, there are 4 key aspects to proper comprehensive disability and special needs planning. There is the legal planning, government benefits, budget and financial planning, and lifestyle and transition planning. And as we go through these, I'll just let you know that the legal planning is the biggest part of this. And then the government benefits will be the second most amount of time that will be spent. And then third, and then fourth. But just because lifestyle and transition planning, there will be the least amount of time spent, doesn't mean it is any less important than any other part. So when it comes to legal planning, for those of you or your families who do not have a plan in place, and by that I mean having things like a will or a trust in place, for what it's worth, fear not, I do have some good news for you, and that is your respective state has a plan for you. However, I do also have some bad news for those of you or your families who do not have a plan in place. And that bad news is your respective state has a plan for you, okay? If you don't have a plan in place, the state will decide how your assets are to be distributed upon your passing, who they are to go to, and the state will decide and appoint guardians over any minor children and or any adult incapacitated children. Okay, so it's probably important to put some things in place so that you are not leaving it up to the government to dictate those things. So the first important document that we're going to be talking about is a last will and testament. And then we will dive into the second important document, which is a revocable family trust, also known as a revocable living trust. Same terms. And then we will discuss special needs trust. And then we'll go over guardianship and alternatives to guardianship. So the first important document to have in place is what's called a last will and testament. And this is an individual document. So if you have a mother and father, married couple with a child with a disability, both the mother and the father should each have their own last will and testament. Okay, this is a document that basically states that you exist and you have things and you have wishes for those things and how you would like them to be distributed. Okay, it is better than having nothing in place, and it is a fairly easy document to create. You could seek out some sort of estate planning attorney to draft it, but oftentimes if you want to do it yourself, a will is a simple enough document that you could go online and you could find the necessary information and resources to create one. The important parts about a will is that in the will, you are going to be stating who receives those assets, who is going to be the executor of your will, and this is where you would list any successor guardians that you want looking after your children. In the documents our organization creates for families, we also have a place where we list out anyone who needs to be excluded from serving in that role. If you don't have that problem, fantastic. But in many of our family trees, we have a bad apple here or there who might look at, our loved one as a paycheck. So it would probably be important to specifically exclude them just in case, if and when that time comes, that person tries to get guardianship to get a hold of assets or things like that. Now, a will, like I said, is better than having nothing in place. But some of the disadvantages of only having a will is that it is a public document. So someone could go online and they could view that will upon your passing and see what you are leaving and to whom. I don't know if you've ever heard of the show. I think it's called Strange Inheritance. I can't remember what channel it is on TV, but basically it's a group of people and they track down people around the world that have different artifacts and paintings and all these valuable collectibles. And you have to think that how exactly do they find out that these people have these things? Well, this is exactly how they do, because a will is a public document, so you can go on and you can view those things. Now, also, if you only have a will, your assets like your house or a checking account or any account that doesn't have a beneficiary designation, those assets are going to go through probate court. And I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with probate court or how it works, but basically it's a part of the government system where your assets will go through and they will basically reassign those assets to the people that you want those assets to go to as stated in the will. However, they will take a fee for performing that service. And that fee is usually somewhere between 5 and 20% of the asset value. Okay? And during this process, those assets will be frozen. So if you wanted them to immediately go to whomever to either pay for funeral expenses or whatever it may be, well, they're going to have to wait until probate is finished with that case. Then the assets get released, minus 5 to 20% value. Another disadvantage with only having a will in place is that you cannot list the individual with a disability or special need in it, because that could disqualify them for SSI and Medicaid and government benefits. Okay, so we have a couple things that we need to solve for here. It's a public document, assets going through probate, and how exactly do we leave assets to an individual with a disability or special need? Well, we're going to solve two of those three, with the second document that's important to have in place, and that is a revocable family trust. And again, just as I mentioned a minute ago, a revocable family trust is the same thing as a revocable living trust. They're synonymous terms, okay? So this is a document that actually gives you more control over your assets than a last will and testament. You can actually put contingencies in a trust. You could say that 50% of my assets go to my son, 50% of my assets go to my daughter, and then you could further state my daughter is to receive 50% of her share upon completion of a bachelor's degree or upon reaching the legal age of 30. You can put those types of contingencies to give you more control over your assets. Also, one of the things that we solved is that revocable family trust is private. So the specific things that you're putting in the trust, those things are not going to be able to be seen if someone was to go online. And because it is private, it bypasses probate court. That's the big reason why people have revocable family trusts. You don't have to be a millionaire to have a revocable family trust. The reason why you have it is to bypass probate court. So the way that we would envision things happening in our heads, if something was to happen to us, we have assets, we state who they're to go to, and they would just go to them when that time comes, right? However, if you only have a will, no, that's not how it's going to work. It's going to go through probate court. But with a revocable family trust, it's going to go exactly that way. It's a very quick asset transfer. You can amend, change, or terminate the document while you are still alive, okay? So you could add people, you could remove people from serving as a trustee and managing the trust or as a beneficiary. You could add them on the exclusion list from serving as a trustee or from receiving assets. Or if something happens in the family dynamics, you can always just simply terminate that trust. Okay. Now, some of the disadvantages to this document is that I don't even know if it's necessarily a disadvantage, but when you have assets in your name, if someone was to sue you, well, those are your assets and they could be subjected to those creditors and lawsuits. Well, nothing's going to change there. If you put your assets into a revocable family trust, because they are still your assets, they are still going to be subjected to creditors or lawsuits. But it is a more complex document to create. So this is where you start probably wanting to retain some sort of estate planning attorney to draft these documents properly. We still have one issue. If you remember, we had 3 issues before with the will. It's a public document, goes through probate, and you can't list the individual with a disability or special need who either needs SSI and Medicaid now or in the future. Well, we still have that issue with the revocable family trust. You cannot list the individual. in this trust, because if those assets go directly to them, that will get them kicked off of their benefits. So we're going to solve it with the third document that's important to have in place, at least the third one. And that is with a special needs trust. And there are different types of trusts, and we'll go over those here in a second. But if drafted properly, you can leave whatever amount in this trust for the individual without it affecting their eligibility for SSI Medicaid. You could leave $10 billion to this trust that's for the benefit of the individual with disability or special need, and it won't affect their eligibility. It is a private document, so again, can't be seen publicly. These assets are in fact protected from lawsuits against the individual. So if someone tries to sue the individual with the disability or special need, they could come after them and their assets, but the assets that are in the special needs trust are not technically the assets of the individual. So they are protected from lawsuits, creditors, etc. While you are still living, if you are the one creating the trust, you can amend, change, or terminate aspects of the trust. Okay. Disadvantages of a special needs trust are they are very complex documents to create, and this is where you could seek out just an estate planning attorney. However, it's a very niche area, disability and special needs law. So this is where it's probably, it's highly recommended per se, that you retain an attorney who specializes in disability and special needs planning or special needs trusts. And then, like I said a second ago, the individual with the disability or special need cannot have access to the assets directly. That's how they're protected, and they preserve their eligibility for their government benefits. So there are a couple different types of special needs trusts. I'm not going to spend way too much time on each of these, but I'm going to spend majority of the time here on these first three. So when I ask people if they have their estate documents done, usually in a group of people, a number of hands go up. And then I further ask, how many of you have a special needs trust? Most hands drop, but a couple stay up. And I would probably say that out of all those hands that I ever have, 90% of those hands that are still up, confidently believing that they have a special needs trust, do in fact have a special needs trust, but they have this first special needs trust listed right here, the Testamentary Special Needs Trust. It's the most commonly created one, but it has many limitations. Okay, so oftentimes a family will go into some estate planning attorney's office. They'll say, hey, I need to get my estate documents done. The attorney says, great, I can help you with that. But then they say, I have a child with disability or special needs, and I need a special needs trust. And more often than not, estate planning attorneys do not know how to properly draft special needs trusts. They just do regular estate planning. Well, in that moment, they know that, and they can either essentially say, yeah, I can do it, even though they know they can't, or they're so confident or arrogant about it that essentially they say, yeah, I got this, no problem. And what they will essentially do is they will create a revocable family trust with special needs trust provisions inside of that trust. That is what's known as a testamentary special needs trust. When you have a family trust and there are simply special needs trust provisions inside of it. So it's not its own separate trust. It only gets activated upon the person's passing. So if mom and dad have created a family trust and it has a special needs trust provision inside of it, nothing can go to that trust until both mom and dad have passed away. And then furthermore, you're hoping that that trust gets drafted and created properly, and most likely it does not, considering the fact that a properly drafted special needs trust has 15 to 30, 40 pages. That's a lot of information, and if you're only having 2, 3 paragraphs inside of a family trust, doesn't seem like you're putting all the necessary stuff in it. So what often happens is that the assets don't go to the trust that's supposed to be created, or they go to it, but it is drafted incorrectly, and those assets either go to the person, which triggers uh, SSI and Medicaid to stop, and or those assets just simply go to Medicaid for payback for services they provided. Okay. So again, it is a legal special needs trust you can create, but it has a lot of limitations. So the most ideal special needs trust for a family to create is the second one, which is called the third party separate irrevocable special needs trust. I'm not going to continue saying that entire name there. I'm just going to refer to it as a third party special needs trust. And the reason why it is a third party special needs trust, it means that it is funded with third party money. So anybody can leave anything to this trust except for one person. The only person that can't leave anything to this trust is the individual with the disability or special needs themselves. Okay, I'll go over where they could put their assets here in a second. But the third party special needs trust is the least restrictive, most preferable option. So anyone can leave anything to it. And if it is drafted properly, and I can't state that enough, if it is drafted properly, there is no Medicaid or SSI payback upon the person's passing, and there is no government oversight. So those funds can be used for the benefit of the individual, however seen fit. So it's not like that money can only be used for qualified expenses like medical and educational. Now, it can be used for whatever. So those three documents, the will, the family trust, and the special needs trust, the third party special needs trust. Here's how they all come together. Inside of the will, a person would state, the executor of my will is the trustee of my family trust. The beneficiaries of my will are the beneficiaries of my family trust. Okay, so you're doing a lot of deferring to this family trust. So if I go online and I see your will, I see this trust that's made mention of, but I'll never actually see that trust. And then inside of the family trust, that's where if your son with a disability whose name is John Smith, if you create a special needs trust for him, and it's the John Smith Special Needs Trust, inside your family trust, you'd say, I'm leaving my assets to the John Smith Special Needs Trust. So even though it has his name, it is not him, but it is that special needs trust. Because the minute that you sign that third party special needs trust document, it is active. It is in place. It is ready to go. It comes with its own tax ID. So it's its own separate entity. A family could turn right around after signing those documents. They could go to the bank. They could open up a checking account in the name of that trust or an investment account, whatever they wanted to, and put money in it. Okay? So it is active from day one. And like I said, it could be funded by anyone except the individual with the disability or special need. Now, we are talking about majority, obviously, for our conference here is for individuals with spina bifida. And many individuals with spina bifida are high functioning or typical individuals, have no cognitive issues, and are able to work. They're able to have a life and accumulate assets and be fully functioning minus some of the physical needs or necessities that they might have. Well, if something did happen where that person was working, but then they are no longer able to, due to spina bifida or whatever it may be, progressing and getting worse and worse, and they all of a sudden need SSI or they need Medicaid, well, they have to be below $2,000 of assets. Well, if they've been accumulating assets for a long period of time, it doesn't seem like they're going to qualify. However, back in 1993, the government created this type of trust through the OBRA regulations. So it's oftentimes called an OBRA 93 trust or a self-settled trust. But it is a type of special needs trust where the individual can put their assets into this trust. It's an agreement that they're making with the government that they can put their assets into this trust in order to qualify for those benefits. And it's also known as a first party special needs trust because the assets of the individual with disability or special need can go into it, the first party money. No one else's can go into it, nor should anyone else's money want to go into it, actually. But it is a way of giving the person the ability to qualify for SSI and Medicaid because they're putting those assets into the trust. And the agreement that they're making with the government is government saying, look, you put your assets into this trust and you will qualify for SSI and Medicaid. However, upon your passing, whatever remains in this first party special needs trust, we, the government, get first dibs as payback for whatever services have been rendered. And then after the government is made whole, then those assets can be passed to whoever you want them to be passed on to. Okay? And with this trust, the money inside of it can only be used for qualified expenses. It is regulated by the government. So it's not like you can use these funds for Disneyland or making a $10,000 gift to a niece or a nephew or whoever. Okay, they have to be used for qualified expenses, transportation, medical, educational, healthcare, things like that. So oftentimes, what people will end up having is they'll have both a third-party special needs trust as well as a first-party special needs trust. At the very least, having the first party as a backup for if down the road things do get worse, then they have it on standby, ready to go, so they can put their assets into it so they can qualify rather than having to spend down those assets. Okay. Then there is what's called a pooled trust, and it is managed by an organization. And these can be used. However, I would probably say it is kind of a last case resort. It's a last resort for people because if you don't have anyone that you foresee who could manage the assets for the individual, if there are no other family members or friends or anyone that you trust to manage the assets for the individual, and you don't see that in the future as well, then a pooled trust might be appropriate for you. But the thing is that if you are giving those assets to the organization, then you have to go to the organization to request certain funds to be distributed from it. And the organization might deny that request. So if you go to them and you say, hey, I want $5,000 out to take my loved one with a disability or special need to Disney World, they might say no, that does not work. And the thing is that it's a little bit of a conflict of interest here because upon the person's passing, whatever assets remain inside of the pooled trust stay with the organization. So they almost don't have an incentive to really distribute the money. So oftentimes families are having to pull teeth to get the funds out for their loved one's benefit. Okay. So like I said, use a pooled trust as a last resort. And then finally, there is a Miller Qualified Income Trust. And some states don't have these, some states do. But basically, suppose you're the individual with spina bifida, let's say that they're working and they have a disability insurance policy, whether it's through work or whatever. And then the spina bifida or something else happens that forces them to not be able to work anymore. Well, that disability insurance policy is going to pay out. Well, if the person needs SSI or Medicaid, again, there are asset and income limitations. Well, what if that disability insurance policy is paying too much in income? That could disqualify the person from receiving those medical benefits. So what they can do is they can redirect that income from the person into the income trust. That way they can qualify for SSI and Medicaid. Okay. So those are the different types of special needs trusts. Again, I know you're probably drinking from a fire hose right now. I'm more than happy to have a complimentary private meeting with you or whoever it may be that you are working with and go over these things further. And then another big topic for people is guardianship. Well, what is guardianship exactly? So if you have children under the age of 18, you are their legal guardian. You have the ability to make decisions for them. You have access to medical records, make medical decisions, speak to authorities on their behalf because they are minors. Well, if an individual with a disability or special need turns 18, or when they do, you as a parent no longer have that right. And I know that it flusters a lot of mama bears out there when I say that, but just saying that in the Constitution, there is no exemption for an individual who has some sort of cognitive delay or disability or special need. Same rights as you and I. So if that person is unable to make medical decisions for themselves, if they are unable to make financial decisions, if they are susceptible to financial exploitation, then you need to petition your local county court for guardianship over an adult or over an incapacitated adult. Okay. When exactly is guardianship appropriate? Well, each and every situation is a little different. Those who have physical disabilities but don't really have any cognitive delays, guardianship probably isn't appropriate. But if there are cognitive delays involved, well, that's where we start trying to figure out if guardianship is or is not appropriate. So a scenario I oftentimes use with families is, imagine your loved one on their own in a shopping mall, and they're going through and they come across a cell phone kiosk, and the cell phone rep comes up to them and says, hey, I got this brand new shiny iPhone 20 or 30 or 50, whatever we're on at this point. It can be yours. No money down. All you need to do is sign this piece of paper right here. You know your child better than anyone else. Are they signing that piece of paper? If the answer is yes, guardianship might be appropriate for you. If they are not as susceptible to that kind of exploitation, then power of attorney, medical and financial power of attorney might be the more appropriate option. Okay. Oftentimes people, when they start pursuing guardianship, they think that they need an attorney. If someone is going to be contesting your guardianship, or if the individual with disability or special need is high functioning enough and they are very much against it, then it's probably a good idea to retain legal representation. Or if you have the financial resources and you just simply don't want to deal with it, you can do that. Okay, I deal with families all the time in those things. However, You do not necessarily need legal representation to go through it. So you could save yourself thousands of dollars. I've seen some states, some places where people have been charged $10,000, $15,000 just for guardianship alone. And that just blows my mind. But you can do that if you want, but it isn't something that's that hard. If you were to follow the instructions and go through the paperwork and the process, you could do it yourself. Okay? So unless someone's going to contest you, whether it's the individual themselves or maybe an ex or someone else, you could go through guardianship yourself. Now, oftentimes people have feelings against or for guardianship, and for sometimes the wrong reasons because they get incorrect information. Oftentimes people think that guardianship is a way of limiting and it stunts the person's growth and development. And that's not the way that it should be looked at. And there's some underlying assumptions that are incorrect that people have. So, can a person get married? Yes, they can get married even if you have guardianship over them. Just like a 16 or 17-year-old, can they get married? Yes, with parental consent. Same thing. Can my loved one with the disability or special need vote? Yes, if they voice that to the judge during the guardianship hearing and they show that they are high functioning enough, yes, they absolutely can retain their right to vote. Can they drive? Yes, they can drive. Just like a 16 or 17-year-old, got to pass the driving test, got to have parents signing off, same thing. So they can still do those things. And oftentimes people look at guardianship as that's the end. They are stunted, they can't continue to grow and develop. And that is not the way it should be looked at all. Guardianship should be viewed as a way of continuing to help and support that person's personal growth and development. And one day, the goal is to be able to go back into the courtroom and have a judge remove guardianship because the person has shown enough progress and growth that they are able to support themselves and they are not susceptible to exploitation. And they are able to make medical decisions in their best interest. That's the way it should be looked at. It shouldn't be looked at as this is the end. Guardianship and they're done growing and developing. No. Some people simply need a little bit more help and are a little bit behind people who are the same age as them. That's the way it should be looked at. In some cases, yes, guardianship will be needed for the remainder of the person's life. That's a reality. But that doesn't mean that that's what you should be striving for. You should continue striving for that person's growth and development all the time. Okay? And each state has its own rules to guardianship. So you're just gonna have to check with your respective state and county. Again, I'm more than happy to have further conversations about that. Now, if you did have guardianship, that cell phone kiosk, that example I just used, if you had guardianship and they signed, well, that contract is invalid because they are not able to sign contracts, okay? So, I mean, I guess that is kind of a downside. They are not able to, at least without you signing as well, okay? Now, if you were looking towards something that is less restrictive, then medical and financial power of attorney documents are what the person should have. And actually, each and every one of us should have medical and financial power of attorney documents. This is giving someone the ability to act on your behalf and carry out your wishes as you've stated in those documents. So whoever your power of attorney rep is, whether it's mom, dad, son, daughter, whoever it is, they are not making their own decisions willy-nilly. They are simply carrying out what you have indicated on those documents. However, some of the disadvantages, and that's just something that comes for many of us with power of attorney documents, is that they are flimsy documents at best. They don't always get upheld in court. So, for example, suppose you are on a family vacation. You're at Disney World. You have an emergency room visit for the individual with disability. And there is some sort of non-life-threatening procedure that the doctors want to do, or a shot or something that's to be administered. And you as a parent want it done, or as a legal guardian, given the circumstances, want it done for the individual, but the individual doesn't want it done. Well, if you have power of attorney, then, if your loved one has power of attorney, they could terminate those documents right then and there, saying, nope, I don't want this. And there's nothing that you could do about it, and the doctors are not going to violate that out of fear of being sued and violating someone's civil rights and being held liable. However, if you do have guardianship, then they will, okay? It is something that does get upheld, and it is something that works much, much better, especially across state lines, okay? So another way of determining whether or not guardianship is appropriate is power of attorney documents. Can the individual with spina bifida or whatever disability or special need, can they understand the gist of those documents? If the answer is no, then you have to do guardianship, because in order for them to do power of attorney, they have to be able to understand it, because they're the ones signing off, and they're the ones that can choose to change, alter, or terminate those documents. Okay? So that's another way of figuring out whether or not guardianship's appropriate. So just a quick review. Like I said, legal planning is the biggest part here. No plan in place. Basically, the state decides everything. So the first important document to have is the last will and testament. The second important document to have is a revocable family trust. The third important document, special needs trust. And it might actually be 2 or more different special needs trusts, just depending on the situation. So for an individual with spina bifida, you might have a third-party special needs trust and a first-party special needs trust. And then either guardianship for the individual or medical and financial power of attorney. And that's something that each and every one of us should also have. So moving along here, the second aspect is government benefits. So we're going to be talking about SSI, or supplemental security income, SSDI, or social security disability. Those two oftentimes get mixed up and confused. People will say one thing and mean the other. So we'll get that clarified. Social Security retirement survivor benefits, as well as Medicaid and Medicare, and then we'll briefly touch up on microboards and person-centered planning. Medicaid and Medicare oftentimes get confused and mixed up. So we'll go over that and get that clarified too. So SSI, or supplemental security income, is a part of the Social Security program that pays benefits to individuals who have a disability or special need prior to the age of 22 and have limited income and resources. So once your child turns 18, they can apply for SSI, and it will only be based upon their income and assets. And again, they have to have less than $2,000 of assets, and the income amount, just depending on which state you're in, is somewhere between $1,100 and roughly $1,400. Again, each state is slightly different. Okay? You can receive SSI prior to the age of 18 for your loved one, but what is considered in that determination is they will take not only the child's income and assets, but the parent's income and assets into consideration. So oftentimes people do not qualify prior to the age of 18, but you can qualify. SSI, the max monthly payment for this year is $794. So the government believes that your loved one can live off of $794 a month. And on one hand, yeah, it's a little ridiculous. On the other hand, though, if your loved one was to live to the age of 80, over that time, that's about $1 million in benefits. So it's not nothing. It is something. But as we go through this planning, you'll see that it's probably important to have something to supplement that. Okay. And like I said, have to be below $2,000 of assets and the income anywhere between $1,100 and $1,400 a month. If your loved one is working, they can still have SSI. However, whatever the amount is that they earn each month will reduce their SSI amount. It's a very stupid equation, but I'll give it to you. How they determine it is the first $85 your loved one earns a month, there is no reduction in SSI. After that 85th dollar, though, for every $2 they earn, there is a $1 SSI reduction. So eventually that gets up to right around that $1,200, $1,300 mark, whatever it is. Okay. The nice thing about even if they're receiving just $1 of SSI, they continue to be, in most states, they continue to be enrolled in Medicaid without having to go through the redetermination process each and every year. Okay. And again, SSI is for individuals with a disability or special need prior to the age of 22 and have limited income and resources. Social Security Disability Insurance, on the other hand, or SSDI, is for people who have worked for at least 10 years and have worked 5 of the previous 7 years and have paid into Social Security and become disabled. So if you or I have paid into Social Security for 10, 15, 20 years or whatever, and then some freak accident happens where you're not able to work anymore, you can file for Social Security disability. You will receive a Social Security disability payment based upon an equation and how much you have paid into the system. Okay? A little bit different than SSI. Okay? An individual with spina bifida could actually get both SSI and SSDI. They could get a blend. So if the person with spina bifida was working for 10, 15, 20 years and then becomes disabled where they cannot do that job anymore, then they could have SSDI. But since they had spina bifida, they've had it since birth, well, they could also qualify for some part of SSI. Okay? But Social Security, when people say Social Security disability, what that is actually meaning is individuals who have worked and paid into Social Security and then become disabled, whether they have spina bifida or not. SSI is for individuals who have had a disability or special need prior to the age of 22. And 22, probably haven't worked 10 years, so you probably wouldn't really be eligible for Social Security disability. It's SSI. Now, going through these processes are basically done online, and for what it's worth, each and every person has their own unique and awful experience in the applying process. And I believe I heard a stat about a year or two ago that Social Security was rejecting roughly 85% of first-time applicants. So my best tip to people is to put your best foot forward in doing these applications. Don't just do the cookie cutter bare minimum on them. Get any and all information. Provide anything and everything in the application. Furthermore, provide any sort of neuropsychological assessments, anything with IQ scores, if they are fairly low. File and provide them with any sort of advocacy letters. So any letters from doctors or therapists that discuss the incapacities of the individual and why they should be eligible for SSI or Social Security disability. Those things will help, because if you are the person sitting down making the determinations on who gets SSI and who doesn't, and you have one application that's a very cookie cutter, very bare minimum, and then you have another one with all these letters and with all this additional information, which one do you think they're going to lean towards accepting? Yeah, the one with more information. Make it as difficult as possible for them to say no. Okay? And that's something that our organization works a lot with families on, so that they can get approved the first time. But if they don't get approved the first time, you can appeal it. You have 60 days from the time you receive the letter, the denial letter, showing that you can appeal it. Okay? If you continue to appeal and you still get denied, then it's probably worth seeking out a Social Security disability attorney to fight your case for you. And Social Security disability attorneys are not allowed to take any money up front. How they get paid is that upon winning your case, they will receive somewhere between like 25 and 35% of the back pay that's owed. Okay? Then there's Social Security retirement survivor benefits. This is basically what you receive upon reaching the age of retirement, when you start collecting Social Security. Okay? So upon that time, suppose you have a parent who retires and they start collecting Social Security, and their Social Security amount is, let's just say, $4,000. And they have a child who has a disability or special need. Okay? That child is, let's just say, 20, 25 years old, and they've had SSI. Well, that child is actually eligible for the child's benefit of the parent's Social Security. And that child's benefit is 50% of that benefit. So 50% of 4,000 is 2,000. Well, you take that $2,000 number, that's greater than the $794 in SSI they're receiving. So that child will get bumped up from $794 to 2,000. And that doesn't take any money away from the parent's Social Security. That's just the determination. So the parent would get $4,000 and the child would get $2,000. Okay? So they would jump from SSI to Social Security retirement benefits. And then upon the parent's passing, then they will get survivor benefits, which is usually an additional 25%. So if they're getting $2,000, 25% on top of that, that's another $500. Now they're getting $2,500 a month. And during that time, when they're transitioning from SSI to retirement or survivor benefits, they will transition from Medicaid to Medicare. Okay? And they could be dual eligible, where they have some aspects of Medicaid, other aspects of Medicare. And Medicaid is your state health insurance program. Medicare is your federal health insurance program. Okay? I hear oftentimes from older individuals that if they need nursing home care or they need assisted living facilities or group home or whatever, they got it. They have Medicare. They'll be covered. Medicare does not provide long-term care support. Medicare does not provide group homes or assisted living facilities. That is Medicaid. And Medicaid, again, has those asset and income limits. So if you ever hear about older individuals needing to go into a group home and they have to spend down their assets, this is what we're talking about. Because just like the individual we've been talking about this whole time who has spina bifida or some form of a disability or special need, well, this is also applicable for older individuals too. If you need Medicaid, if you need group home or assisted living, whatever, that person cannot have more than $2,000 or $3,000 worth of assets in their name. Some states it's a little bit more, but I think 48 or 49 states, it's 2,000 or 3,000. So oftentimes people think, well, I'll just give away all my assets right now. That's not quite how it works. The government can look back up to 5 years and see where that money has gone. And if you have been just giving it away within those 5 years, you will get penalized and you'll have to wait for a certain amount of time until you can qualify for Medicaid. And during that time, you're going to have to come out of pocket for whatever those expenses are, whether it's, $5,000 a month, $10,000, $15,000 a month. Okay. So these are the differences between them. Medicaid, your state health insurance program, and you have to be below a certain asset and income amount. Medicare is your federal health insurance that you usually get upon reaching the age of 65, or when a parent retires, starts collecting Medicare, and their child with the special need begins the transition to start receiving Medicare as well. Medicaid eligibility. So most states automatically grant Medicaid when you get approved for SSI, and most states let Social Security kind of handle the whole Medicaid enrollment. These states right here are the ones that let Social Security handle it for them. And then some states do it themselves. So a state like Nevada or Oregon or Utah, upon getting approved for SSI, that person will be approved for Medicaid, but they have to do the application still. Okay. And then there are a couple of states that have more strict policies for their Medicaid, a little stricter than what SSI is. So maybe their income amount is slightly different for Medicaid than it is for SSI, and that would be these states right here. Illinois, Virginia. I need to check for this year. Pretty sure all of these are still the same for this year. But yeah, just do a double check on it, 209B states. But yeah. And then microboards. So a person who is receiving Medicaid, they might have either, if it's a child, they might have the Katie Beckett Medicaid waiver that gives them access to different things like occupational therapy, behavior, physical therapy, things like that. Or when they are an adult and they're receiving Medicaid, they'll also have those types of programs that are available to them through their Medicaid waiver. So they could have, speech therapy, behavior, social skills, things like that. And they're usually offered through an agency like Easter Seals or some other vendor. Well, sometimes people don't really like the services that they're receiving, or they want more of one thing, but they can't get it because based upon the program they enrolled in, that's all they're offered is these 2 lessons a week or whatever. So what a family could do, and this is a little bit more complex, but you could create your own formalized nonprofit organization for the individual. If you have a daughter, Angela, who has spina bifida, you could create a nonprofit and call it Hopes and Dreams of Angela and have a board that is making decisions for the individual. That nonprofit could apply to be the direct Medicaid provider. So instead of the money going from the government to a place like Easter Seals, it would go directly to that nonprofit. And then that nonprofit can utilize those funds as they see fit for Angela. Now, you can't take those funds and go to Disney World. They still have to be used for qualified expenditures like speech therapy, behavior therapy, water or horseback riding, whatever it may be, okay? But it is a way of fine-tuning and using those funds a little bit more for the individual's benefit. So the third aspect of planning is budget and financial planning. And there are a couple things we'll talk about: balancing present and future goals and needs, assets, liabilities, income, expenses, balancing family goals, third-party help, guidance, custodianship, ABLE accounts. So It is tough for a family who has an individual with a disability or special need because they do have additional things they have to do. Plus, they might have other, maybe more typical children, and they have to find a balance in financial goals between them. And as well, maybe they're focused on retirement as well. So you can have educational goals, retirement goals, maintaining the current lifestyle for that individual with the disability or special need. Well, how exactly are you going to make sure of those things? Well, you could save every penny and have it in retirement plans, investment plans, whatever. Another way you could do it, oftentimes the individual with the disability, the parents envision them living with them until they're either no longer able to care for them or they pass away. The parent's big concern is what's going to happen upon my passing. I can take care of them and have all their needs met while I'm alive, but what's going to happen after that? Well, maybe when you're getting SSI and that 794 a month, maybe instead of getting 794 a month, maybe you decide that $400 or $500 a month is good for you, and you take the rest of that money and put it towards a life insurance policy. That way, their needs are taken care of while you're still living, but then upon your passing, there's a big windfall of cash that's able to carry the child the rest of the way. And that's oftentimes something that I work with families in doing, in finding the lowest price and what's going to be the most adequate thing. Because oftentimes what people don't realize psychologically is that before they got SSI, well, they were doing just fine. Sure, it would be nice to have more money each month, of course. But what if we temper our expectations and rather than wrapping our head around that $794 a month, maybe we say, hey, $400 extra a month. That's pretty good. And then we take the rest, allocate it towards an insurance policy. That way they are taken care of. That takes care of it. Another thing, especially for individuals with spina bifida who could be working, is ABLE accounts. Now, ABLE accounts were created from the ABLE Act back in 2014. And basically, it's kind of like a glorified checking/investment account for an individual with disability or special need, where they can put money into it and it will not affect their eligibility so long as it doesn't go over $15,000 in contributions per year and it doesn't exceed a $100,000 balance. So they could directly deposit their paychecks actually into this account. And if it goes over $2,000, no big deal. It's not going to affect their eligibility. Okay. Now these are state operated accounts. Each and every state has their own. Just because you live in one state doesn't mean you have to go with it. There's a website right here. You're welcome to check it out. Get more information. You can compare and contrast the different accounts. They are all set up online. So it's not something where you can just go into your local Bank of America and say, hey, I want to open up an ABLE account. Good chance they will have no clue what you're talking about. Okay. Each and every state selects a custodian to oversee the ABLE accounts, but that money that's inside of them can only be used for qualified expenses. So it is a government regulated program, and upon the person's passing, that money will go to Medicaid first for payback. Then it will be distributed. Okay. And you might be thinking, well, why don't I just do this over creating a special needs trust? Well, think of an ABLE account kind of like your checking account. And think of a special needs trust kind of like you would a retirement account. The special needs trust is going to be your long-term vehicle. And it is what you can designate to receive assets in your documents. You cannot list the ABLE account as a beneficiary. No, the assets will just simply go to the person, and then that will get them kicked off benefits. And if they have owed anything for Medicaid services that have been provided, well, that money is going to go to them. And that was one thing I forgot to really mention earlier, is that even though a person could be on Medicaid and they're not paying anything, don't think for a second that the state has forgotten what they've provided you, because they certainly have not. They keep a running tab in some government computer. So if you have a tab of $30,000 and then all of a sudden you have a life insurance policy, or someone had a life insurance policy where the money is to go to the person with disability, well, that $100,000 is going to be $30,000 less now, because the government's going to take that $30,000. That person's going to be kicked off of SSI and Medicaid. And until they get underneath that $2,000 mark, they're not going to have those things. So they're going to have $70,000 to their name. And until they get down below $2,000, there's going to be an issue, and they won't be able to get those benefits. But yes, an ABLE account is a great way of someone being able to directly deposit their money. So that could definitely help someone who has spina bifida who is working, and they don't have to worry about directly depositing their money into a regular checking account and having to make sure that it stays under $2,000. They could put it into an ABLE account and have it build and overflow over that $2,000 mark without having to worry. Then the final part, coming down the home stretch here, is the lifestyle and transition planning. So oftentimes, let's just say that we have all the legal planning done. Fantastic. Good for you. You have all the government benefits coordinated, and heck, you've even done the budget and financial planning as well. Fantastic. But I'm willing to bet that for many individuals with disability or special need, they couldn't care less about any of those things, because they might not even know what those things really mean or understand them. And if that is the case, then essentially they're going to be concerned about someone, whoever their future caregiver is, knowing who they are and what matters most to them. So we create what's called a letter of intent. And this is kind of like a guide into who the individual is, what their likes are, dislikes, behaviors, tendencies, how to operate medical equipment, what kind of schedule medical equipment is on. Those are the types of things to document. And you could do so by writing these things down, or oftentimes what we do with families is that we will create a private YouTube channel, provide the family with the username and password so that only people with that can actually go on and view whatever audio or video recordings are on there. So essentially you could show how to operate medical equipment or make audio recordings to explain certain things. So that makes it as seamless a transition as possible upon the parent or the caregiver's passing, so that whoever is going to be looking after the individual afterward, it makes it as smooth a transition as possible, not only for the individual with disability, but the caregiver as well. So those are the 4 aspects of disability and special needs planning. And like I said before, I am more than happy to provide any of you with a complimentary private meeting to either go over your own personal circumstances or with a family. You're welcome to relay my information on to whoever it may be. And let's see here. And I'll do a little bit of Q&A here as we're kind of going through this, and Juanita's going to kind of help me out with it. The first question I've already got, Juanita, so you're good on that part. Can you set up a power of attorney to go into effect immediately for an individual, not just when they become incapacitated? So yes, you can. With power of attorney documents, you can set, in most states, you can set them up where you can either have it be a durable power of attorney or a springing power of attorney. The difference, springing power of attorney, you have to have a doctor signing off that the person is no longer capable of handling those affairs. Durable, the minute that it is initial durable and the power of attorney document is signed, you're good to go. You're able to act on their behalf right away.
Okay, if anybody has, I know this was, thank you so much, Andre. This is very, like I said in my chat, this is really complex information. So I know it might take a little while to think about what you want to ask, but in the meantime, I do have some questions. Just thinking about, this meeting, the clinical care meeting, and how, a good portion of the attendees are providers. So just wondering, providers who obviously have direct contact with families, do you see a role in helping providers either be aware of or somehow share this information with the families that might need to know about this?
Kind of like how to bring it up in conversations?
Yeah. I mean, I really don't know what the answer is for that. Is there a role for the healthcare?
There absolutely is a role for medical providers, and it just simply requires a little bit of understanding about the circumstances of the family. If you have a family who maybe the mother and father or whoever have some critical illness, or maybe they're getting older, it's important to get those affairs in order. If they have any sort of life insurance policies that they plan on passing to the child with disability or special need, probably important to not have it list the individual. Well, how do you give it to them then? Well, that's where a special needs trust can come into play. And that's where essentially at that point, they could just say, hey, here is this guy's name and number, and you're welcome to reach out to him. He's happy to answer the basic question or really sit down with you and talk in more detail about what your situation is. So that's one way that a provider can be of help, is just simply being aware of the family circumstances. And if they have a patient or so who is turning 18 or is going to be in the next year or two, these are definitely topics around guardianship and SSI that can be brought up, making sure that those things are in place. So just throwing those things out there, just nonchalantly with families, hey, your child is turning 18, you might want to start considering whether or not guardianship's appropriate so that you can continue making medical decisions for them. Or SSI, here's this guy's number. Simple as that.
Okay, great. Thank you. You had also mentioned, so thinking again about the cost of establishing some of these plans. You had mentioned that it can be pretty expensive to set these things up. And just thinking about how a lot of the families or individuals, are of limited means. So this can be pretty expensive. Do you know if there are some organizations that can maybe either help doing this at a lower cost? I mean, not done cheaply, but done at a lower cost or with some assistance. I'm thinking about groups like disability rights, the Disability Rights Organization in your state, et cetera.
So there are, I'll speak to two different levels of this. So these types of services some places charge what I feel is exorbitant amounts, where it can be anywhere between $10,000 and $20,000 to do these types of things. I'll say that for our organization, I don't want any conflict of interest here, but I consider us almost we're like the George Bailey of disability and special needs planning with ours. That's one aspect of things. As far as further lowering costs and things like that, there are some states that have more programs set up to provide more helper assistance with them. Not every state has the same things, but just like you were saying, like a disability rights advocacy, things along those lines, it's important to check with your respective state to see what types of organizations there are and how extensive they can be. I know that there are some states back east that they will evaluate the person's financial circumstances and can help them with some of these documents. I can't speak to all of them or all the states, but there are some. I'll put it this way without getting too political here. It seems like the states that are a little bit more blue are the states that would be more likely to have these types of programs and assistance. I'll leave it at that.
We have a question from Jason Woodward. What are some questions that one could ask to know if an attorney really knows how to do a special needs trust?
Well, there's a couple ways you could do it. One way in my organization, what we do is we actually contract with an attorney from each respective state that is part of an organization called the Special Needs Alliance. It's an invite-only organization for attorneys who have demonstrated that they know what the heck they're actually doing in disability and special needs law. And you could just go on Google and Special Needs Alliance, and that's one way that you could find an attorney or attorneys in whatever respective state. I would say that it's not necessarily asking them the questions as much as it might be going online and doing some research and finding someone. Because yeah, I totally get where you're coming from, Jason, with the question. It's just hard to really ask a question that you could get a definitive answer that you could tell that this person does or does not know. Because yes, sometimes people can just BS their way through things.
Andre, did you say the name of that group was a Special Needs Alliance?
Yes.
All right, I'll see if I can, well, I'll just put it in the chat. Obviously I don't know the website, but we can just look it up.
Yeah, it might be something worth, posting on your guys' websites as far as resources in terms of like legal advocacy and stuff like that. But yeah.
Cool. Thank you. Let's see, do we have another question? Oh, you're welcome, Jason. And then I think you mentioned this, but was there a maximum allowable amount that can go in the ABLE account per year?
Per year is $15,000. So what that essentially means is if you had an ABLE account and the child puts their paychecks in and it totals $10,000 for the year, that means that mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, whoever combined can only put $5,000 more into that account for the year. If they go over the $15,000 amount, then it's almost like you're taking an invisibility cloak off and the government can see it as an asset. And so they'll view it that, okay, this individual has $16,000 in their name, and they get kicked off. So 15,000 is the most that can be contributed per year.
And is there a penalty for withdrawing the money sooner?
Oh, you can take the money out at any point. It's just simply you can't contribute more than $15,000 into any one ABLE account per year. And each individual with a disability or special need can only have one ABLE account.
Okay, thank you. And Rebecca said that she thinks sharing this information would be important to talk about as part of overall transition planning. And I was thinking the same. And of course, it would be great to have some kind of like just put together information that would be easy to share, as a resource. So something to think about, but for sure, important information for transition.
And if any individual who's viewing this right now works with an organization that supports a lot of different families, I work with organizations around the country in providing these types of workshops. So I am more than happy to coordinate a date and time with you and provide this exact same session, but for your families as well. That's not an issue at all.
Great, thank you. Oh yeah, and everybody can see Andre's contact information there. Awesome. I think that's all I had. Did anybody else have any more questions before we close? I actually did. I'm sorry, I did have one more thing. There was the a medical directive. Is a medical, because I was thinking about your Disney World example, like if there was a medical situation and how a power of attorney wouldn't do any good in that kind of a situation if the person in your care disagrees with treatment. So at that point, is a medical directive just a completely different document?
So there's essentially two different documents. There's a medical power of attorney, oftentimes referred to as like a healthcare directive, and then there is what's called a living will or otherwise known as an advance directive oftentimes. But a medical power of attorney is really talking about how a representative is supposed to carry out just various types of medical procedures, operations, things like that. They're not necessarily life-threatening, where a living will is all about pulling the plug. That's oftentimes where our head goes when we think of healthcare power of attorney. Do you want the plug pulled? A living will is about pulling the plug or not, where a healthcare power of attorney is talking about things like, administering a shot or, certain procedures, things like that. And what will oftentimes happen is if you have a power of attorney, especially if it's from another state, and you go in, the hospital or wherever, they'll say, hey, that's great that you have that. We have our own template and you'll need to fill this out. So it's almost like, well, what was the purpose of me doing this then? But it can be a sticky situation if you do have that situation where the person is resisting whatever it is. And oftentimes, and I totally get it, doctors don't want to be held liable for violating a person's civil rights. That power of attorney can sometimes put you in a spot where you can't really do much as the parent or the caregiver or the guardian, or not even the guardian, but the parent or whoever.
All right, thank you. And Jason had another question. Is there any legal standing to supported decision making?
So supported decision-making agreements, this is my non-legal opinion on it. I think they are great ideas, and I really like their focus in trying to promote the growth and development of an individual, where you don't have to take away their rights per se with guardianship. The problem with it, though, is it's not universally accepted, and there's a lot of gray area when it comes to the legality and liability there. It's kind of a middle ground between a power of attorney and guardianship, but it's in some states it's very much promoted, while others it's not. So if you have supported decision-making agreement from Nevada and you were in California, they might just view it the same way as a power of attorney, where they don't accept it. So I think it's still got a ways to go before hospitals and doctors view this as legitimate as they do guardianship.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you very much, Andre. This was excellent. And I hope, for any extra questions that, people reach out to you. And yeah, thanks again a bunch. Really.
Absolutely. And the final thing I'll just say to everyone is, even if you don't have in your own family an individual with a disability or special need, much of what I was talking about is still applicable to you and your family, like wills and revocable family trusts and things like that. So it's still very much important to address these things. And even if you have elderly parents who potentially could be needing nursing home care in the future, and they have assets that you want to be left, to family members and not, dwindled away by healthcare expenses. Yeah, these things are still very much applicable to you as well. So very much applicable to everyone. But yeah, if you have any further questions or want to have a further conversation about it, my information's all right there. You're welcome to reach out to me. Otherwise, yeah, I want to thank everyone for their time today.
Thank you, Andre. Have a good rest of your Saturday.
Absolutely. Thanks, Juanita. Take care. Bye.
Bye.